Hello everyone. Today we are going to look at how to create a ball bounce in 3ds Max. Uh, you will see that the ball has motion blur and the ball is rotating while it is bouncing. Okay, so we are going to look at how to do this real quick. The rendering took less than 1 minute to complete, and we are going to use dynamics to create this animation. So let us get started. What I'm going to do is create a plane for the ball to bounce on and make it white. Things are going to be really simple, and you can use this to create a ball bounce to learn how to create keyframes. Alright, so this can be used as a reference to create a keyframe ball bounce animation, and then you can later on add squish and stretch, as there is no squish and stretch in this ball bounce animation. Alright, so we will go to customize unit setup, make sure that we are in metric centimeters, so we do things to somewhat to scale, and this can be like a ball which has, say, a 30 centimeter radius. It's kind of a beach ball, or maybe a 10 centimeter radius small ball. We can angle snap it, shift and rotate, not that but the plane, so we get a background. Okay, so we have a background and the ball. Now to see the rotation on the ball, we will add a material to the ball. So everything is going to be basic, so I'm going to use scanline renderer and a basic material, drag general and add a checker pattern. The background is going to be white, so we will change the white color to red. And then if you look at the material, so when I double click on the map, I can modify the parameters for the texture. It's a procedural texture, so you just have to change the values here. And if you double click, then these are the parameters for the material. Now you can see this material is quite flat, so we will make it glossy by adding some specular maps and then reducing the glossiness, so you get a nice shiny beach ball kind of a material. Okay, and then we need to assign that material to our ball. So select the ball, right click on the material, assign material to selection, still not visible, right click, say show shaded material in viewport. And now we have the ball material assigned. Okay, so you can see that the ball, we will also reduce the number of segments to 18, so things are a little more faster. Okay, we will be rendering something like this, so when the ball falls down it will look big enough. Alright, so now what we need to do is add some rigid bodies for our simulation. So select the ground, go to animation, mass effects, rigid bodies, and this is going to be static rigid body. So in the modify panel you will see there is a rigid body assigned, it is static, and then there are parameters. What type of material is this rigid body made of? So it will decide how much the ball is going to bounce. So cardboard is going to be less, and rubber is going to be more, and then there are certain other options as well. And then you can say that there are presets, so if you want to create your own preset you can do it. So for example, let us look at cardboard. So the cardboard has a density of 1.5 and mass of 5, and the friction, static friction, dynamic friction, and bounciness is different. If you go to rubber, then the bounciness is more, and then the mass is more, and so on. All right. So we'll select the ball and go to animation, mass effects, rigid bodies, and this is going to be dynamic. That means this is the object that is going to move, and the rigid static is the object that is not going to move. So we can make this rubber if we want. We can make this concrete. All right. And then if you play here, the animation is not going to play. What you need to go to is animation, mass effects, utilities, and show mass effects tools, and you get this window. If you go to the next option, here you can play the simulation. So we will zoom into our perspective viewport and then play the animation, and then you can see that the ball is falling down. So our animation is now ready. Now we will set up the camera so that we can render our animation. So we can hit Ctrl C to add a camera, and then we go to show save frame, and then in render settings we are going to use HDTV, and it's going to be a small 720 by 405. Okay, so now we will set up our camera. Let us close this and come back to this later. Oh, why is the camera looking at the other side? Ctrl C to add a camera. All right. So the camera, and then you can see that if you go to animation, mass effects, rigid board, utilities, show mass effects tools, and then what you can do is to set up the camera, I will bake this animation. So I will say select the sphere and say bake selected, and then what it will do is create keyframes, and now you can play your animation here and it will be much faster to play. So what I want to do is check where the ball hits the ground and then place my camera so that most of the action happens near the ground. So we need to place the camera so the ground is visible, and then we want to get rid of these black patches. So one of the things you can do is select this and scale it. Okay, so now everything is white in the scene, and then the ball is bouncing. So we need to make sure that the ball is out of the frame. So now we need to get rid of this. So we go to animation, mass effects, utilities, and then we will say unbake selected, and all the keyframes are deleted. So now we can move the ball up outside the screen, then play the animation, and now you can see that the ball is bouncing and rolling. Now what we want is that the ball, when the ball falls, it is not rotating at all. So if you go to motion panel, go all the way down, and where it says advanced parameters, we need a big number for the speed. Okay, so say 500 for the speed, and then when you play it, We'll rewind it. Okay, and then let us make it 1000. Alright, now let us work on some of the parameters to make the ball bounce look a little better. So this concrete is not working well, so I'll try steel. Okay, and that looks good. Maybe this 18 is less. Let us try 24. And I want to use rubber. Shape type, we will say sphere. Okay, and this one shape type is box is good. So let us now, okay, so it is rolling to the left. Let us see if we can try to roll it to the right. Let us try initial spin of 1 here and 0 and see if that gives us. Okay, you can see how it is spinning, and then now 0 and 1 here and 500. How about typing -1? And there you go, it goes to the right now. Alright, so what we will do is, now the ball is bouncing and going to the right, so our camera should be more to the right, so it is anticipating the. So I like this animation, so I'll go to and bake it. Bake selected. Alright, so we don't need this window anymore. And now we are going to move this to the right, so everything is white. And now the ball is falling. Let us move this camera more to this side and shift this more to this side. Alright, so now the ball is falling and then going to the right. Maybe a little less. Okay, a little left to the center. So that looks right. So our animation is done now. So now it is time to add some. If you render this, everything is pretty flat. You can see that there's some little nudging happening there, so we can select these and scale it more. Alright, also save your file, ball bounce, desktop, where you save your work in specific folders. It's important to organize your work. Okay, now if you render it, you will see that the ball is, there is no motion blur. So let us add motion blur to the ball. Select the ball, right click, object properties, and motion blur is at the bottom right. Make sure it is image, so it does a faster motion blur. So you can see that there's a slight motion blur there. So we will look at the motion blur when the ball is falling for the first time, and you can see that there's a motion blur. Now the motion blur is less as the ball moves from one place to another, less. Okay, so if you want to add the motion, increase motion blur, if you right click object properties is a multiplier, so if you make it 2, you might get more motion blur. You can see that it's more, but I think one does a good job, so let us leave it to that. Then now we need shadows, so we'll go to lights, and we are going to have standard lights so that animation is super fast. We are going to use a direct light, so simply the light comes from top and falls down onto the object. And in the motion panel, in the modify panel, we turn on the shadows. So now our ball has shadows, but everything else is dark. So we are going to use overshoot option, render it. Okay, so our entire plane is visible, this is not visible, so we are going to use. So a little bit about lighting is that when a light falls in real life, the light is going to bounce off the surfaces here, and it is going to bounce. For example, the light is on the top, it falls on this ground, and then the light ray is going to bounce off the surface and light the bottom of this ball. So it's the secondary or the bounce light or diffuse light. That's why you see everything has light. When you turn on the light, everything is visible, even if it is not facing the light source. That is because of the bounce light. So in standard lights that does not happen, so we have to fake bounce light. So what we are going to do is we are going to create an Omni Light which creates light in all the directions. We'll place it slightly above the ground, and there will be no shadows cast by that, and the intensity is going to be 0.1, much less than the intensity of the main light, which is 1. Okay, so the multiplier for the main light is 1. It is going to cast shadows, but our Omni Light is not. And then we are going to create another Omni Light onto the right, and we will make it an instant. So I'll select this, and then I will copy this to the right. Okay, so we have light from all the directions. You can see here there are 2 lights here, control select 2 lights here, slightly down, and then I'll shift copy those lights up. So now we have an intensity of 0.8. Let us render that, and now you can see that there's light all around, but this is bright, this is less bright, this is more bright. So now we can reduce the intensity of our main light, which is the directional light, to 0.6, for example. Okay, and then if you render it, then it loses some of its intensity. What we can do is add a few more Omni Lights to get more intensity onto the background. Okay, so there's more light here, and then we can further reduce the intensity of this one and see if that works well. Okay, so now it's more or less even. So that takes care of that. Just move through the frames and see if everything looks fine. And then if you go to render settings, we want to say range 1 to 100 is good, 720 by 405 we already decided that, and render output is going to be again the same place where you save the file. Wall bounds. File type can be either an AVI movie or a MOV, and then if you click on setup, You can decide what kind of compressor you are using. So it's MPEG-4 and the best quality, so that works well for me. And then you save it, and then you hit the render button, select the right viewport, and then select the render button. Did I say range or not yet? Range. That's why it only rendered one image. So I'll render again. I'll say yes because it says do you want to override, and you can see how fast it is. It's going to take just 1 minute to render the entire animation. Okay. And last few seconds left. Once this animation is done, we'll look at the animation and the tutorial will be over. So work with dynamics, see what else you can do, and have fun basically. Alright, so animation is rendered. YouTube, 3ds, animation 1, ball bounce, rigid bodies, and open with QuickTime Player. It's only 951 KB. The file size is super small, and you see that you have a ball bounce which has a rotation and motion blur as well. Okay, so you can use this as a reference to create keyframe animation if you like. Thank you so much.